Just another brother with another humble question. Just another brother with another humble question.
Welcome to Brotherhood Questions. I am your host, B. Period. I appreciate y'all for joining me on today. We are about to dive into a video today. Let's before we get going though, let me ask, please like, subscribe to the channel, hit that little notification button when you subscribe for me so you know when they are coming. But we're gonna dive right in. Of course, the channel is called Brotherhood Questions. So like, subscribe, and then comment. Tell me what you think about the video. Tell me what you think about what I said. Tell me what you think about what he said in the video. But let's go right ahead. We are going to dive into this video. Now, to give you some backdrop, this is the video stems from a conversation. You're going to see Killer Mike here. He's riding out right now. Just won 3 Grammys at the Grammys, and is certainly doing the tour. I don't know if he's touring, but he's touring the talk show kind of circuits and things of that nature. And what he's doing though is he's commenting with presidential candidate Robert Kennedy about his ideas on child support. So let's take a listen to what Killer Mike has to say.
So back to child support. I think the solution is this, and I'm out your way. 2 years. Young woman gets pregnant as a teenager, young man and woman get pregnant. This is the 2-year plan. First 2 years are debt-free. You don't have to pay the government anything back. So she doesn't get to drag him into court and the court doesn't say, you owe us money for investing in your child through food programs, through early Head Start programs. Because in those 2 years, the boy has the option, or not even the option, he has the demand of the co-man to then go to a trade school. You have to go to a trade school, which incentivizes the United States to do it because we need more tradespeople.
So his setup is he's talking about solving the child support issue. Okay. So he says his plan has young man, young woman get pregnant as teenagers. And so the process now would be that young man would, in theory, that young man would be taken to court, right? Validate that he is the father, and then he'd be set up immediately on some sort of child support, provided, the mother pursued all of those things. So he's suggesting, rather than do that, put a demand or a command on that young man to go to trade school. So for me, my first problem with the plan, let me talk about what I agree with first. So I agree that a young man who doesn't seem to have a plan should either go to trade school. If he's not going to college, should definitely be going to trade school. So me and him, we agree on that point. What I don't like is the concept that his plan is dependent upon the government demanding that young man now go to trade school, with the promise that at least for 2 years, right? Because that's the average amount of time it's going to take to go to trade school. Some less, about at the most, about 2 years. But the government demanding that young man goes to trade school in order to avoid, quote unquote, paying or going into debt for child support. It's that government component that just bothers me, because one of the things that we know about government is that government overall is inefficient. And so to now allow government the possibility to inject themselves into the lives of young men and women, he's knowing Killer Mike, he's really thinking about the Black community, but just in general, allowing the government to be interjected in your life at this point in your life, when I believe there are better people. Hopefully, let's say hopefully you have parents in your life and they can do a better job of imparting information into you, even though you might have fallen through the cracks and made some mistake, if you will. But the idea that the government is demanding, because usually, I'm thinking if the government's going to put a demand, if you don't comply with the demand, then there's more than likely going to be a consequence. And so my question becomes, what's the consequence? Because the government doesn't put demands on people without also asking for a consequence. So that's I see a challenge with that part. But let's keep going.
We don't have enough carpenters. We don't have enough electricians. We don't have enough people building roads. In my community, the girls are going to college and graduating. They have no men to marry because the boys are not going to college in the same way. My teachers were married to a tradesman. My teacher, who we call doctor, her husband owned a locksmith company. Her husband was a carpenter, was a mechanic. So they had a good life. Their kids went to school, right, the same school.
Okay. So now he says that one of the challenges in the Black community is that the girls are going to college and the boys aren't. So I'm a little lost and confused in the argument here, because first we were talking about young women and men who are pregnant or getting pregnant as teenagers, and now we're having a conversation about how the young men aren't going to college but the girls are. So I'm wondering how many young girls who got pregnant as a teenager are actually making it to college. Right. So, I'm getting lost in his argument, and maybe help me out. Help me get back on track, if you will. Comment, let me know where I missed something. But then he went on to say that the young girls, because they're going to college, don't have any young men to marry because the young men aren't going to college at the same rate. And so I'm challenged with that, in the sense that you're saying, what is this? Is the suggestion that because the young man didn't make it to college, he's not worthy enough to get married to? Or, it was a suggestion that because the young man didn't go to trade school, he's not worthy enough to get married to? Like, so I'm confused on what we're saying. I agree that you should never marry a man who has no vision and no plan. So we're on the same page with that. But the idea that because he didn't go to college means he doesn't have a vision or a plan, it's these slippery slopes that we keep riding on in the Black community about what makes a man worthy enough to get married. And we gotta be careful with that. We gotta really be careful with that.
We went to. I think that the incentive to solving the child support problem and a part of solving our infrastructure problem is to incentivize young boys who have gotten a girl pregnant. You must now go through 2 years of trade school.
Oh, wait a minute. So, okay, I like what you're saying.
Let me give you the rest of the answer first.
Okay, go ahead.
After that boy graduates, you get a further incentive if you and the girl marry. If you and the girl marry, we'll give you these incentives: zero finance home loans, something out of HUD besides an apartment with a leaky faucet and rats and roaches in it, but incentivize marriage, which then strengthens our community.
Okay. So now he's getting to one of the hallmark problems, I think, that exists in our community, which is the idea that we don't have enough marriages. Okay. Or the idea that marriage doesn't seem to be as important. But again, everything that he's saying is dependent upon the government providing incentives in order to make this happen. The problem that I have with that is it takes the responsibility off of the people, because we live in an age where everybody is smart enough to identify the problem, read about the problem on the internet, and offer a solution, but nobody's doing anything about solving said problem. So if you know that there's a problem where there's too many single mothers, well, then women, stop encouraging people to have sex and have people talk about the idea that maybe you need to wait. Like, why aren't those the prominent conversations that we're having, as opposed to talking about finding ways that the government can incentivize us to become married? No, find ways to incentivize us through our own conversations to say, hey, maybe you don't have to sleep with everybody. You know what I mean? Like, just, you can date and not have sex. Like, those things are possible. It doesn't mean that you need to give us reasons to want to get married. No, you are smart enough to recognize that you would be better off married. I look at a lot of the guys who, like a lot of the rappers, especially once they get to a certain age, all of them are married, right? All of them are trying to get to a situation where they have a stable wife who are raising their children in a neighborhood that they deem safe or whatever the case may be, right? And all of them are trying to get their children to a place where they didn't have to experience whatever they experienced. So we all get that marriage is great. But now we need the government to incentivize us to understand that? No, we need to do better. We need to find ways to get the government out of our lives, because anytime the government does something for you, there's always a catch. And this idea on face value might seem like a great idea, but there would be a catch, because that's what we do in government in this country.
The black community and strengthens the greater community, because now you have more American marriages, you have people with stronger financial stability, and you have tradespeople married to women of education, and you begin to recreate communities like what Auburn Avenue was, what Edgewood was. I believe you can do this from the executive order, because the money that funnels down from the feds through the states to help mothers, then it can be attached where we're not only helping mothers, we're helping fathers too. If a boy gets a woman pregnant, not only does she receive TANF, I see your face, right? Good idea. If a woman receives TANF, she receives this, the boy now has a must. You're federally required now to go to trade school. And in those 2 years, what you put out on the other side is a person who's trained, a person who has incentive to marry, and a person who becomes a taxpayer and not just a taker of tax.
All right. So that's what he said. That was his plan. Again, it all stems from what the government is about to have the mandate you to do. And that's my biggest problem with his idea. Why is it that in order to quote unquote get young black men, because again, I know Killer Mike, that's what he's talking about, to get young black men and young black women on board with what is most healthy for their life, we now need to make it a requirement, and then incentivize it through government programs for you to, number one, go to trade school, and then number two, get married. You're telling me life hasn't taught us? You telling me you haven't Googled enough on the internet? You haven't watched enough shows of young women wilding out to realize that marriage is the key to a healthy family? And then here's my bigger problem. So you're incentivizing people to get married. Okay, sure, fine. What are you doing to make sure that they understand what that process is? Right? Because one of the challenges that a lot of single people that I know, who have been single for long periods of time, had their children but are still single, one of the challenges they talk about is the fact that they don't know what that looks like. So now you got these incentives maybe to get you married, but then nobody's taught you what that looks like. So how long are you actually going to be married in the first place? So how long you might get to keep this house that you got, through some kind of government program, right? Because if y'all don't stay married, whatever financial benefits you had to get this place, if you're probably not married, you might not be able to keep that house. So you're still lost in the shuffle. What we need to do, in my opinion, is we need to really dive into our young men and women in the community and really hone into them the importance of a family. For those that didn't grow up with a mama and a daddy, we need to surround those children in whatever way we can, whether it's through school programs, whether it's through after school programs, right? Hook them up with people who can show them what a family, and what I mean by family, I'm talking about the traditional nuclear family, what that looks like, so that they would want that for themselves. And then encourage them to slow down. You ain't got to get everybody that you ever wanted to sleep with. You ain't got to sleep with them all. It's not a requirement. You know what I mean? Matter of fact, I think your life will be better if you don't. Instead of finding ways to create a program where the government demands that you do A, B, C, and D. I mean, I get the concept, and the concept sounds great. But anytime you put that government in there, it's always gonna go to the left.
Yeah.